Greetings, fellow mathematicians. Let's talk about the mathematics that children will learn in Year 1. They will begin to investigate addition and subtraction formally. So to do this, they need to investigate number lines. They will learn that counting forwards by ones on a number line is adding 1 each time. And they will learn that counting backwards on a number line is subtracting 1 each time. They will learn that numbers get larger as they move to the right. So we start addition on the left end of the number line, so we have room to get larger. And they will learn that numbers get smaller as we go to the left. So we start subtraction on the right end of the number line, so that we have room to get smaller as we subtract. They will then learn to investigate adding single-digit numbers and subtracting single-digit numbers. Initially, they'll use counters, and then they will move on to possibly putting one number in their head starting from 1, and then put the other number in their head from 1 and then adding them together, until finally they will begin to count on or count back. This is when they will start using a number line, and they will record their number on the number line, and they will record counting forwards by ones as they add on the other number, or they'll put their number on the number line and they'll record counting backwards by ones as they subtract the other number. Children will also investigate patterns, identifying the part that repeats. The part that repeats is the part of the pattern that makes it a pattern. By identifying this, children can continue patterns and they can find errors. Children will also begin to investigate place value concepts. Although they're going to be adding and subtracting counting by ones, in the following terms they will begin to investigate adding and subtracting using place value concepts, because they're not going to count by ones to add and subtract forever. Now, the place value concepts include friends of 10, place value of teen numbers, and partitioning single digit and teen numbers. Friends of 10 means we're going to have a 10 frame and we're going to place counters on the 10 frame, asking 4 important questions. How many in the top row and how do you know? How many in the bottom row and how do you know? How many altogether and how do you know? How many more to make 10 and how do you know? So using 10 frames to investigate friends of 10 through addition, we're also going to investigate friends of 10 through commutativity. Commutativity means that if I know that 6 and 4 are friends of 10, then I also know that 4 and 6 are friends of 10. Children will also investigate friends of 10 through subtraction by placing 10 counters on the 10 frame, taking away some of the counters, and then explaining that I had 10, I subtracted 4, and I have 4's friend of 10 left. These 3 ways of investigating friends of 10 are vital to ensure that children can move on to using these place value concepts to subtract and add in term 2. Place value of teen numbers, we're going to use small cubes that join together, similar to the size of the MAB, but using cubes that join together means that we can actually break 1 10 into 10 ones rather than just swap them, and this means that children are going to get much deeper understanding. So they may make a teen number, join 10 cubes together and have the ones separate, and explain that, for example, 14 is 1 10 and 4 ones. That's standard place value, not too troubling. But then we're going to also investigate non-standard place value, which means we're going to break the 1 10 into 10 ones, and now we can describe 14 as 14 ones. Children need to understand non-standard place value as well as standard place value. Children will partition single-digit numbers into 2 parts, into 3 parts. Every number can be partitioned into other numbers. Children will then partition teen numbers into 2 parts, into 3 parts. And when they partition into 2 parts, they will then explain whether their partition uses place value or whether it does not use place value. They will also investigate 2-dimensional shapes, and they will describe curved lines on a 2-dimensional shape as just a curved line, straight lines on a 2-dimensional shape as a side. They will also investigate length using single and multiple units, and they will also investigate position and directions. In Term 2 of Year 1, children will begin to add and subtract single-digit numbers using place value concepts. For example, if they wanted to add 7 and 5, they would start with 7. They would want to jump to 10 because 10 is a place value. They would identify that they've used 7's friend of 10, which is 3. So now they'll work out how they partitioned the 5. They partitioned the 5 into 3 and 2, so they have 2 more to add. They'll use place value to add the 2. 10 and 2 is going to be 12. With subtraction, they may start with 12 and want to subtract 5. So they'll start with 12 on the right end of the number line so they can get smaller. They want to jump to 10 straight away because 10 is a place value. They'll jump 2 back to 10 using place value. Then they'll identify that they partitioned 5 into 2 and 3. They'll subtract the 3 from 10 using friends of 10 through subtraction. So they started with 10, they're going to subtract 3. They're going to have 3's friend of 10 left, which is 7. Now they're going to also start to investigate adding a single digit number to a teen number to get over the 20 and subtracting a single digit number from a 20-something number, getting back over the 20. To do this, they'll start to investigate friends of 20 and then they'll start to investigate friends of any decade, relating this back to their friends of 10. They'll also investigate standard and non-standard place value of 2-digit numbers. Now, standard place value is just, for example, 24, 2 10s and 4 1s, just naming the values of the digits. Non-standard, we can break one of the 10s into 10 1s. So now we have 1 10 and 14 1s. Then we can break the other 10 into 10 1s, and now we have 24 1s, explaining 2-digit numbers initially using the little blocks, and then over time they'll be able to investigate standard and non-standard place value of 2-digit numbers without any blocks. They will also start to partition 2-digit numbers. So for example, 24 could be 23 and 1, 22 and 2, 21 and 3, 20 and 4. And they will identify that when it's 20 and 4, they've partitioned using place value. But it is very important that children can partition numbers without using place value as well, because this is vital for when they're going to be dividing up in Year 3 and 4. Children will also be investigating area using multiple units. They'll actually work out that the square is the best shaped unit to measure area. They will also investigate chance using chance language to describe the chance of familiar events. They'll also be investigating duration of months, of seasons, of days and of hours. In Term 3 of Year 1, children will continue to add and subtract single-digit numbers over each decade, so over the 20s, over the 30s, backwards over the 30s, backwards over the 40s, using place value concepts. While they're doing this, they'll also start to investigate other concepts of addition and subtraction and patterns in algebra, which include adding and subtracting. 0 does not change the number, and you can add using associativity. Associativity just means that if you have 3 or more numbers, you can add them in any order. For example, if I have 3 plus 8 plus 7, it makes sense to add the 3 and the 7 first because they're friends of 10. They're also going to start their investigation of division. Now, when they divide, they're going to investigate that there are 2 ways to divide. One way is we can divide by 2 by making groups of 2. Or we can divide by 2 by making 2 equal groups. So they'll be investigating the 2 different ways to divide in this term. They'll also be investigating 3-dimensional objects, and they'll be describing the surfaces of the 3-dimensional objects. So a 3-dimensional object's surface could be curved or it could be flat. So there's only 2 ways that they can be. Now, if the surface is flat and the lines around the surface are straight, then it is a face. If it's flat but the lines around the surface is curved, then it's not a face, it's just a flat surface. If the lines are straight, they're called edges. If the lines are curved, they're just called curved lines. This is what they'll be investigating in this term. They'll also be investigating the volume and capacity of objects and containers, and they'll find that if the object has flat surfaces and straight lines, then cubes are a great shape to measure the volume and capacity. And they'll find that if the object or the container has curved lines, then they need a liquid unit to measure the volume and capacity. They'll also be looking at collecting data and then representing the data in pictures. And they will also be looking at the values of Australian coins and understanding that the value of the coin is not related to the size of the coin. In term 4 of year 1, while children are still investigating, adding and subtracting single digit numbers to get over tens numbers, they will also be investigating equivalent number sentences. Now this is where their investigation of equality really builds up. The equal sign does not mean that we're going to write the answer now. The equal sign means equality. It means that everything on this side is equal to everything on this side. They'll use equivalent number sentences to really develop this deep understanding. They're also going to begin to investigate division, and mainly division by 2, and halving. So they're going to investigate, for example, odd and even numbers. An even number, when you halve it, you don't have any left over, and an odd number, when you halve it, you have one left over. When we divide by 2, we've already looked at dividing by 2 in 2 ways, by making groups of 2 and by making 2 equal groups. When children divide by 2 by making 2 equal groups, they will be able to pick up half of their counters. Now when they divide by 2 by making groups of 2, children will begin to count the groups to work out what it equals. They'll begin to write number sentences. For example, I started with 6, I divided into groups of 2, and I found that there were 3 groups. If they divide by 6 by making 2 equal groups, they'll record their number sentence as I started with 6, I divided into 2 equal groups, and I found that there were 3 in each group. Same number sentence describing the 2 ways to divide. Now when they're investigating halves of shapes, they're going to relate this to halves of groups. So for example, they may halve a shape, and then they may place half of their counters onto each half of their shape. In this way, they're relating halves of shapes to halves of groups. They'll also be comparing and ordering mass using an equal arm balance, and again, that brings in that concept of equality. Each side has to be balanced if they're equal. If they're unbalanced, they're not equal. They're going to be interpreting pictographs using the language of chance. So they're going to see that they can tell which category has the most, which category has the least, most popular, least popular, and so on, which is chance language using pictographs. They're also going to be looking at the hand movement on clocks. For this, they each need to have their own small clock where the hands move in sync. That means that as the minute hand is moving halfway around the clock, the hour hand is moving halfway to the next number. In this way, they'll have deep understanding of what half past means, and of course that's related to our investigation of halves. So these are the concepts that children will be investigating during year 1.